Magnus here, and I want to start off this episode with first telling you that I just bought another 512 gigabyte SD card, and I'm recording off of that off the 5D Mark IV, 30 frames per second, and my intention is to test this memory card to see if I can actually record the whole episode without any buffer readout interruptions. I had a couple of buffer readout errors before, but that was for a short amount of time and it stopped, unlike my other 512 gig card, which was successful a couple of times, and then from then on I could not get it to record consistently. It's a SanDisk Extreme Pro 512 gigabyte card, UHS1 U3. So here's hoping. Hello, Magnus here, and today I want to talk about the GH5, set to launch in 2017. Now, I've been thinking about getting another camera with 4K capabilities. I've got 3 cameras, 2 mirrorless Samsung NX1s, and 1 Canon 5D Mark IV that can record in 4K, but the features that were announced in Photokina a couple months ago really got my attention when it comes to the next level of standard recording. Now, pretty much high definition has become standard recording these days, and moving on, if you don't buy 4K when it comes to producing video, then quite honestly, you're behind the pack, especially as consumers and everyone else upgrades their quality to 4K. So without any further ado, let's get started. Panasonic GH5. Now recently I did a spec prediction of the Canon 6D. Now those specs not everyone was happy with in hearing, but we're dealing with Canon and we're dealing with kind of their structure and how they don't want to compete with their Cinema Pro line. Now coming off of that, you have manufacturers such as Sony and Panasonic that really want to compete and push forward the technology and really adhere to those not only wanting quality photos but also wanting great video performance. And Panasonic is one of those taking the lead. The Sony a7S II and the a7R II are 2 amazing cameras and incredible performers in low light. However, they do have the issues which actually turn me off pretty quick when it comes to battery life and when it comes to overheating issues. Low light performance on those mirrorless cameras are amazing, and of course the quality is just impeccable. However, great things have been said about the GH4 since its launch in 2014 that are still said today. It's many videographers' go-to camera when it comes to 4K footage. Now, when the GH5 was announced, I kept my eye on it. I leaned towards the full frame sensor in the 5D Mark IV and wanting 4K quality off of that, but that does not mean that I won't look elsewhere. Obviously, I got a crop sensor in the Samsung NX1 for my first 4K cameras, and we're going to talk about the GH5 right now. So let's go over the features and my personal opinion of what we know, and then a couple of assumptions that I'll make before I tell you whether I think this camera is worth buying or not. First, now I'm going to stick mostly towards the video aspect because when Panasonic talked about the new GH5, they geared a lot towards video. And the video crowd will just consume that and love that and talk well about this camera because that's who this camera worked for in many previous situations and in many settings. GH4 has been a camera that a videographer on the go can really turn to. One of the first and most obvious features is, of course, this new camera body will feature 4K, but 4K at 60 frames per second. Right now, that is a feature that is pretty much allows the expanded capabilities of 4K. Not only can you get great footage, which you can use in multiple settings, but you can crop into that footage and still get 60 frames per second. Now, 60 frames per second, in my opinion, looks too, I guess, realistic to really use when it comes to doing a film, but then if you take that 60 frames per second, you could slow down the camera work to about 50%, either half or a third of its speed, depending on the frame rate of your film, and you'll get something amazing. So 60 frames per second, excellent. Another thing they mentioned, 10-bit 422 recording. That's over 1 billion colors or a billion shades that you can get in the GH5. Now, a billion shades and being able to reduce or practically eliminate banding when it comes to processing in post for final production is great to have it, and I think that it's a plus that they do have it. However, it's not too much of a determining factor for me because, for example, I tend to shoot pretty close to the final look of my product that I want. So any extreme adjustments are only minor tweaks if necessary in post. And second, when it comes to color banding and any type of effect that you would have, that's usually in high contrast, low light situations. And I really don't run into that. If you're gonna go to a shoot, you're gonna work with what you have, but in most situations, you're in a well-lit environment. I mean, I've also filmed in dark weddings with 420 1080p recording at 30 frames a second, and I've had no problem doing minor tweaks and delivering a product that was actually enjoyable to my audience, as well as music videos and others. So it's something that I really haven't needed. Having it is a plus, but again, it's not a selling point for me to say, hey, I'm going to get this one instead of the other one, unless all features are alike and that's the only difference. And then of course you get the better one for you. But again, not a selling feature for me. Then we've got a curious little thing. The camera has 6K 30p, so you can pull 18 megapixel photos. Now to me, what that means is it's going to use a similar type of recording as a 4K recording or a 1080p recording, but because of the high resolution, it's going to eat up the buffer on your transfer to like the SD card, and then from there it'll do maybe a couple seconds. It might not be able to dissipate that heat sufficiently enough to record more than maybe a few seconds or maybe even a whole minute before it stops. Now the GH4 did have that burst photo recording. I do not believe that the GH5 will be able to record continuously for long periods of time with 6K burst photo recording. But it is a nice feature to have. It's better than not, and it kind of teases you into the capabilities of where cameras will push to the next level. Nothing like, I mean, improving your quality of recording on a DSLR or mirrorless camera to 6K, and then from there, you know, downsampling to 4K for monitors, but letting you do it, and the camera doesn't have to do it. So that actually works to your advantage. So I think that that is an exciting plus, but there's still more to be revealed. So those are the main features that they announced at Photokina. They haven't announced the codec, but my prediction for a codec will be one of two. Either they're going to stick to what works, H.264, it's less intensive on the processor and it's easier to process internally, or go to H.265, which does a better job at compressing, though it's pretty processor heavy on the camera. And then of course for a modern computer to actually decode that footage, it's a bit intense, but it's already supported through major editing programs. It's been out for a couple of years. I mean, I work with it on the NX1 and it's easy to work with. Thanks to the updates. My computer can handle it, of course, and heck, it handles it a lot better than the MJPEG videos from the Canon 5D Mark IV. So I think they should move forward with that, and let's start stepping up to H.265. But H.264 would be just fine too. I mean, it's kind of the go-to right now. It's easy. It's pretty much play it anywhere and not have an issue. So another thing that I predict for that camera, which would not be a surprise to anybody, is that it's going to be a micro 4/3 camera. I mean, the camera body is very similar to the GH4, maybe even a tad smaller. And if they're going to make it a tad smaller, that means the sensor is probably going to be just as small. So it's going to be a micro 4/3 sensor, which, you know, is smaller than a super 35mm sensor that's normally used in cameras that are used for productions and film. I don't think they're going to change that. It worked for them with the GH4. It's going to continue working with the GH5. From a megapixel count, I will not even begin to predict on what that's going to be. But at the very least, this camera is going to be pretty amazing. Final question of the day. Would I get this camera instead of Canon 6D Mark II, whose features have not even been announced yet? But again, check my video. You can see what I believe the specs will be. And my honest opinion is I will wait until the 6D Mark II is announced and see what features it has. Although I think the features of the GH5 are incredible. But the other thing is, and it's kind of a big deal for me, is the sensor size. Micro Four Thirds, again, not a bad size. You get great footage off the GH4. However, APS-C is, to me, a better size. Full frame is also great, even though you get cropped from GH4, you get close to a Super 35mm. Micro Four Thirds is a bit smaller. I'm not going to say that it's too much smaller, and it's still a great size, and you get incredible bokeh and pretty decent low light performance off of that. But that's the one struggle that I have with the GH4 and the GH5. It's really the sensor size. So, but that's just my opinion. I mean, I'm going to give GH5 a try. I'm going to rent it, see if I can film with it, probably film a couple videos with it, see the quality. And I was blown away by the 5D Mark IV, despite the few struggles I had with it. And I'm dealing with the codec because, quite honestly, the codec itself, sure, it's been memory heavy, it's been a space hog. However, the quality that you get out of it, it made it worth it. I made a couple of purchases to larger cards, and now I don't worry. The current card that I have on here will record for 2 straight hours before I run out of space. And then I got a couple other backup cards that will record for even a longer period of time. So for a longer shoot, I'm already set with the 5D Mark IV. And I can edit pretty quickly off of that footage. Transfer it over, do my edits, delete the backup, output, I'm done. With some struggles that you have towards cameras and with this type of filming, you have to be able to adapt. That's what I believe, to be able to get what you want. And the GH4 and eventually the GH5 will be able to work for many videographers that I know. It's one of the top cameras and one of the favorites. So let me know what your comments are on the GH5 and how you think it's going to perform. And if you want to get one. The features that they announced is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the total performance. Can you guys guess or anticipate anything else that you'd hope for this camera? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share, as always, and of course, you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. Hit that subscribe button here, and watch the videos. See you guys later. Should be good.